Hello there YouTube, Mr. Living Dead 13 here once again, and this is another episode of the Galactic Curse Show. I've not done many recently, and I apologise for that. Fucking hair. I will be doing more, but anyway, what I'm here to talk about today is usually seen as a touchy subject. I'm here to talk about God. And the faults in the aspect of God. We're going to start with the whole free will thing. If, say, someone's walking home from work or whatever, and these two guys jump out, and one has a knife, and it's the usual shit. Empty your pockets, give me your money, all that shit. God's logic. I'm not going to intervene because it would mess with free will. But there's only one person's free will that he'd be respecting, and that is the robbers, right? He would be letting them do whatever they want, but looking at it rationally, the person who was getting mugged, their free will would be affected, right? So if God does that and his free will, their one person's free will is ignored, but there's another fault with it. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the word for it because I've not used it a lot, so I suck. Either way, I think it's omnipotent or some shit. Either way, God is said to be everywhere. So that person's getting mugged on the way home, and he's standing there watching and not doing anything about it. But in the Ten Commandments, he said, don't hurt your fellow man, or something along those lines. He said don't do shit like that. But he still lets people do it. So if he was going to let people do whatever they wanted to do in the first place, why would he give them free will? Why would he give people the ability to disobey his laws? Second of all, in two Bibles that I have read, the Christian Bible and the Satanic Bible, Satanism is basically about pleasing yourself. Like, if you want to do something and it's for self-gain and it's going to help you and it's going to make you happy and all that bullshit, you do it. But to an extent. For instance, if I wanted to go to the shop to buy some cigarettes because the cigarettes make me happy, but it would cause me to miss out on 5 minutes of a film that I promised my friend that I would watch with him, then it's cool. You know, it's not going to put me in a bad place or whatever. So looking at it rationally, that's self-worship. It's classed as self-worship. And you're a devil worshipper, like you're a Satanist, or you worship demons and all that shit, if you worship yourself as a god. But God's either an atheist or a Satanist, because he said, I am the only one that anybody is allowed to worship, so only worship me. And that goes for everyone. So if he's saying that goes for everyone, he means himself as well, obviously, because he's part of everyone. Because apparently God's in us all, or some bullshit. So God's in us all, and he says to worship only him. So that means he either worships himself, or he doesn't. Like, God said that he was always there. He was never created. So he doesn't believe that anybody created him, or anything created him. Therefore, God's an atheist because he doesn't believe in a higher creation power or whatever. He's either that, or he worships himself, basically how he comes across in the Bible. He worships himself, which makes him a Satanist. So technically looking at it, being a Satanist is okay because you follow God's will and you follow what God does. So if you want to look at it rationally and you follow what God does, if he worships himself, he's a Satanist because he's a self-worshipper and he will do things to make himself happy and shit like that. And there's so many loopholes in the Christian faith, plainly because the Bible has been twisted and manipulated to whatever the Christian faith, like the people who run the whole thing, want to tell people and want to say to people. So like, if somebody figures one thing out, then they'll change it to make themselves happy and explain it in a way that God did it or some shit like that. My friend once told me that when they started finding dinosaur bones, some Christian preacher turned around and said, yeah, well, God didn't want us to get bored, so he put them in the ground for us to look at. That doesn't make sense to me. And 2 seconds. Sorry, my cat was pulling over everything. Anyway. So, God worships himself, or he is an atheist. Looking at it rationally. And then back to the free will side of things. Someone's getting mugged. They don't want to get mugged, obviously, so their free will is being affected. Personally, if I was omnipotent and I could be anywhere and do anything and all that shit, if someone was doing something wrong, which I specifically said not to do, then personally I'd see it as alright to intervene with their free will and basically be like, right, dude, I told you not to do this shit, so why are you doing it? This person's free will's been affected, so I'm going to affect yours. You know, it seems only fair. But no, God is the giant floating asshole of the universe that would prefer to just float about on a fucking cloud and watch all this shit happen. But then he complains about it. So he turns around and goes, okay, right, so say this guy was good all his life, followed all God's rules and all that shit, didn't ever break any of them, but then one day, for some weird reason, he decides to mug this person on the way home from work. Then he gets an eternity of pain, burning, and just sheer agony. I personally don't see that as fair. Personally, I think if all this shit's true, and it actually does happen and all that crap, I think that you should get punished for what you've done. If you've only done one bad thing in your entire life, then get punished for that one bad thing, and then go to the middle place or whatever. Like, have different levels. Why should certain people be allowed certain things? Because, like, the Christian faith, the Bible and all that shit and the preaching, it's been twisted and manipulated so fucking badly. People use it to their advantage with certain things. Like, they loads of people that I've come across and been messaged by personally on YouTube and Hotmail and all that rubbish, they're okay with people who agree with them, follow blindly, and do whatever they say. So they're okay with you as long as you see their side of the story. But they're not ever willing to listen to your side of the story. That's what fucks me off about it. Everything they say is allowed to be, like, they're allowed to stand out in the streets and shout about it and spread the word, apparently, and all this rubbish. But the second someone else picks up a Bible or like their holy book or their holy readings and start shouting it out in the street, then it's wrong, and then nobody should be shouting out in the streets. But the second that person stops, they will be back out there. I've experienced this personally. I'm not making this shit up. Where, like, the town that I live in, there was these two preachers standing outside City Hall, and when I was walking past, one of them said, "Do you want to hear about the Word of God?" So they were asking me if I wanted to have a conversation about it. I said, yeah, sure, okay. So I just wanted to see the sort of stuff that he'd come out with. He came out with all the usual stuff, and I questioned every single line that he quoted me. He was saying, like, God invented Adam and Eve first, but it went Adam and then Eve. And then I was like, right, okay, so your religion is sexist. He said, no, it's not. But it obviously is. The man was created first. God is said to be a man. There was the Son of God, not the daughter of God. Then there was... what else was it? It's like the Pope. Always a male Pope. Have you guys ever heard of a female Pope? I haven't. So it's a really sexist background. It's a mostly male background. And then he started getting a little bit impatient with me because I was obviously making good points and he didn't like that. So he started saying that God will smite me and people will kill in the name of God and all this rubbish. Which is another major contradiction on their part. Plainly because God says, "Thou shalt not kill," in one of the 10 Commandments, I think. Don't quote me on that. My cat is saying hello. Anyway, God says don't kill. It's bad. Not allowed. Don't do it. But in biblical times, he was totally cool with people killing in his name. But it was only ever the gays, people who don't agree with them. In loads of biblical stories, he helps them to kill people. If I was almighty and all that shit, and I didn't want certain people on the world that I created, how do I put this? I wouldn't fucking create them. If I felt like being homosexual was wrong, I wouldn't fucking create them. If I felt that being Jewish was wrong, I wouldn't fucking create them. Why would you create something and put it onto your earth that you've made and then complain about it and bitch about it and moan about it? That's like spending like a little while designing a tattoo, getting the tattoo, and then from day one fucking moaning about it. It's stupid, idiotic, and moronic. It makes absolutely no fucking sense. And people that are always going on about fucking gay marriage and that it's wrong and that God hates it and all that shit, that's also bullshit. You don't need to get married in the eyes of God. I'd never get married in the eyes of God. Why should gay people feel like... I mean, there's gay start again. There's gay preachers, gay priests. I've met a few of them. I'm friends with a few of them, you know? And they don't see anything wrong with being able to embrace God and embrace the love of another man. There's nothing fucking wrong with it. People sit there and say, oh, it shouldn't happen, it's against God's will and all this shit. Gays will go to hell and all that shit. If God wanted them to go to hell, he wouldn't have created them. Or he shouldn't have created them. And then there's the fact of people say that God is perfect. God can't be fucking perfect. If God was perfect, then all of humans would be perfect. In the eyes of the Bible and in the eyes of most Christians all over the world, then, now this isn't my thoughts, this is just me looking at it rationally from an obvious point of view, from other people's point of views. If God was perfect, then according to the Bible, he wouldn't have created homosexuality, he wouldn't have created killing, he wouldn't have created manic diseases, he wouldn't have created pain, he wouldn't have created all the imperfections that man has, and he wouldn't have created anything apart from perfection. So clearly God isn't as perfect as people say that he is. And then people, like, folk will say to me, oh, but the devil created pain and suffering and stuff like that. Well, if you look at it rationally, God created the devil and the ability for the devil to come up with stuff like that. So if Lucifer did create all that pain, then tracing it back, God fucking started it. And people are always coming out with shit like this. God is this, God is that. And unless you fucking agree with them, they don't want anything to do with you. But instantly, people like assume, they'll look at me, or someone like that dresses in my way, or in the same way as me, sorry, and instantly think devil worshipper, because you listen to music, or you play music. If you think of it, if music is the devil's work, they play it in church. They have an organ, or a piano. They sing. It's the exact same thing, just different lyrics in different tone. And I mean, some heavy metal songs are the most beautiful songs, and with using the most beautiful lyrics that anybody could ever come across. People just hear that sound and assume devil worshippers. I know someone that fucking loves Marilyn Manson, loves Slipknot, all that sort of stuff, but is a full-blown born-again Christian. They can quote the shit out of any line in the Bible. What does that tell you? It tells you that you don't need a certain preference to be a certain religion or have a certain belief. It's just a giant misconception all over the entire world that you need to be 100% pure. And when people say that they're 100% pure, they're fucking lying. They're not 100% pure. Nobody is. Nobody is perfect in any way. You can have little perfections, like, I don't know, if you wanted to be exactly 6'2" and you grew to exactly 6'2", that's perfect. That's exactly what you wanted. That's exactly what you were aiming for. Now, I know that's a bad analogy, but still, you guys get what I mean. And just the shit that people constantly stream, it's just bullshit and bullshit and bullshit. It's just piles and massive amounts of bile just shitting out of their face. Their face is literally shit when people come out with stuff like this. It's degrading, and it is probably the world's biggest misconception ever. Because people, unless you believe what someone else believes, they're not going to be happy with you. With most people, that's what it's like. But like I said a few times in this video and in other videos, I'm friends with people that you wouldn't expect me to be friends with. if I was running on this stereotype that people have me as, I would be friends with people who have black nails, loads of tattoos, long black hair, or just long hair, crazy hair and all that shit, loads of piercings and thick black eyeliner. I'm friends with people who wander about in beanies and trackies, like just shell suits. I'm friends with Christians. I'm friends with people who just have no style, just the jeans and a t-shirt, just anyone, you know? As long people need to get it into their thick fucking skulls that as long as someone treats you exactly how you deserve to be treated, then who gives a fuck? Why should it come down to religion, skin color, sexuality, belief, and just general ideology of the world? Why should someone's friendship and relationships be built on the pure fact of what they believe and what they are? Either way, I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'll be putting up much more videos on stuff like this, so stay tuned. Like, subscribe, comment just down there. The usual shit. So I shall see you soon, my little monsters. This is the Galactic Weirdness 11 Dead 13 signing off.